Christina Reynolds.
Okay, so I want to get this straight. You are an author, actor, motivational speaker, screenwriter, and I know there's way more other things, but I'm going to keep it short. And you are the host of the #1 Christian women's talk show internationally.
Yeah, well, at least where I'm airing.
So you grew up in Beverly Hills?
Well, I'm a native Californian, born in San Francisco, raised in Los Angeles, but I went to Beverly Hills High School.
Okay.
So I know all sides of the equation,
yes,
from Beverly Hills to a whole lot of other more difficult parts of LA.
So, but you grew up in like the thick of Hollywood.
I actually did.
Okay, so that's kind of my point. So today we're going to talk a little bit about sex.
Oh.
Because this seems like a very taboo subject in the Christian world. Like
It ain't in Hollywood.
Okay, exactly. That's why I was like, when I was thinking of this, I was like, Cynthia is the perfect person to talk about this because you will be bold, you will be blunt, and you've experienced a lot of the industry of what really forms our culture and our society.
My God, yeah, our sexual norms are dictated so much by media.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Music. I remember music videos were like a big thing. That's like how I learned.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was young. I guess I was in high school when MTV first really launched. Ooh, dating myself. But I remember when Madonna, you know, first hit music. Madonna's really responsible for music television, but what she ushered in with her videos was a whole sort of new visual thing that included a lot of the sexualization of you know, the images that we see. It's interesting, you know, but I think the media, for better and worse, really does dictate a lot of what we think about ourselves sexually, a lot of what we think about others sexually, a lot of what we think about sex, period. And that's just so entirely incorrect.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. So I don't know about you, did your parents teach you about sex? My parents certainly didn't. So it was kind of left to the media to dictate my idea of what it was.
It's true. I think that's why I was so messed up. I got all of my sort of thinking about sex from what I saw in magazines or on television shows. And because I was a really creative person, I always have been, I sort of just play acted my way through the whole thing. And my mom and dad, well, my dad certainly never talked to me about sex. He was so old-fashioned that I think as a father to speak to his daughter about sex was just like, he just didn't do that. And my mom didn't at all. Just, you know, I think a lot of parents come from a generation in which you just didn't talk about anything at all, any kind of issues. But I think even a lot of parents today still don't really educate their kids about sex. Or what I find with a lot of my peers is that they think that what their kids learn about sex is just the norm, and it's just the way. I've had girlfriends say to me, but that's just how it is, Sin. Like, I mean, they're just gonna have sex at 14 and 15 and 16, and they just accept it, and they expect it. That's the crazy thing, is that parents out there actually expect that their kids will be having sex regularly. And so instead of even give them an alternative, which is you can be celibate, you know, you can like save this for marriage, and you can raise the bar, and you can do things differently. It doesn't matter what the world is doing. Instead of having that dialogue with them, they just sort of go with the flow. And the flow is not really good when the media is driving the flow.
Totally. So let's talk about sex. So I have down here, what are your thoughts in general, and this is being so vague, about sex in our hypersexual culture? And when I say hypersexual, I mean because it's constantly in our faces. Like, I'm driving down Sunset and it's like, you know, billboards in your face. I mean, you see it in magazines, you see it at this, you know, at the malls, you see it everywhere, social media. Every girl's popping her booty out, trying to make it look bigger. Yeah,
which is shocking to me, because I mean, if anyone had ever told me that, you know, big booty and big lips were going to be like the thing that was in, I would not have wasted so much time trying to be skinny all my life. I wouldn't. Like, I can't even believe it. But I also can't believe that it's like a thing to take a photo with your booty out first and sort of like looking over like your face second. I mean, I thought the face was the more important, you know, thing. But what my thoughts in general, I mean, I just think that in general, I think it's better to wait until you're married in general. I mean, I think God's way is better. And I know that because I've tried it my way, which was not God's way. And I've tried it God's way. And it wasn't until I committed my life to, you know, accepting the fact that my way wasn't working for me. So, you know, it was really kind of by process of elimination. I tried it my way so long, it kept failing. And I bet your way is too. And so I just decided I might as well try it God's way. You know, maybe he's right. I mean, he's God after all, you know, and that's when I began to see results in my life. And it's oddly enough, that's when I met my husband. And that isn't that like really the trip? I met my husband when I started saying no to premarital sex. And we were friends first, and he got to know me, and you know, and then as he fell in love with me, it was kind of like, it was very, very healing. And I think for most people in the world today who've fallen off the bike, so to speak, and had sex, it's never too late, because, you know, I certainly had already, I mean, I had a baby by the time my husband and I got together, so I knew how to ride the bike, you know, but it was like becoming born again all over again, you know, like becoming a virgin all over again by committing to be celibate and committing to seeing my identity the way God saw me, which was as his daughter and as a virgin bride. And to meet a man who honored that was such a trip, because all of a sudden I realized that I was loved for me.
And not just because he could get some.
You weren't getting any, you know. But I mean, it's so funny to me, because even now I think about it and I'm like, every game that I ever played in courting, and I think this is where we are today, because we're taught to play a role. So every role that I played in order to like have my boyfriend or be a certain kind of a girlfriend, or, you know, get a guy to marry me or want to marry me, I did not play any of those games. Because when you are engaged in an intimate relationship with someone that's not your husband, you tend to cut off the getting to know process. And so now you're in this sort of intimacy that's based on really no foundation.
Totally.
Nothing.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about like what is sex, because you're talking about the intimacy of it. I think that, you know, the girl or the guy that goes out and has a one-night stand, they're not thinking, oh, I'm being intimate with someone. It's purely physical. It doesn't mean anything. Like, before I knew the Lord, I was sleeping around and it didn't mean anything. But so we've kind of lost the holiness and the sacredness of sex. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I think in losing the holiness and the sacredness of it, right, we've lost ourselves. Because I think it's kind of, I mean, I get it doesn't mean anything, it's just sex, it's just physical. I get that. But in reality, it means everything. And I think that girls like can go along with that to a point. Like it can actually be like, it doesn't mean anything to a point. There comes a point where you've been vacuumed enough times of like respect after the act, love after the act, honor after the act, dignity, that eventually it begins to mean a whole lot. And what you realize is that eventually you feel awful because you're giving pieces of yourself away and you're getting nothing in return. You're depositing pieces of yourself all over the place. And I mean, it's really, it's terrible, but it's true. Like I mean, that's how it felt. Like it felt after a while, it feels that way. When you're young, I mean, because I remember it's easy for it not to mean anything. But there's always that, you're lying to yourself, because there's always that moment with somebody, at least some guy, where there's an expectation of maybe he'll like me.
Oh, that just pains me. And this pains me because kids are having sex now, like what, 12, 13, 14 years old. And that is way too young to even process those kind of like painful emotions of rejection and like
Completely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or
completely. And not to get like too crazy on, you know, the spiritual attack thing, but the
it's
enemy,
for real, though.
it is for real. The enemy has a huge open playground to mess with you with those thoughts that pop in that say, well, you're not attractive enough. That's why he didn't call you. Well, there's something wrong with you.
Totally.
Well, no man's ever going to like you. No one's ever going to want you. And so the way that women respond to that is we then put on more bravado. We just act tougher on the outside. We act cooler. We, you know, we get even by getting in bed with another guy.
Totally. Oh, it's so twisted.
It is twisted.
It's so twisted. It's like
twisted.
this downward spiral of depression and like, you know, your self-worth just goes down the tube.
Yeah.
For sure.
Completely.
So, okay, so in this, I think our culture is just so, I mean, everyone, you're being encouraged in your sexuality when you're like 5, from what I hear, like in kindergarten and stuff like that.
Right.
So for even just, let's say, a 12 to 14 or even 16, 17, 18 or even 30-year-old right now who has been given science, like it's science, we have sex drives. The Lord made us with hormones.
Yeah.
Like we have a desire to be intimate and have sex, like physically. So not even just talk about the emotional, but what's some advice that you would give to
how do you deal with those raging hormones?
Yes. 18 years old, 17, 16, I mean, you know what's right up to that.
Resist the enemy and he will flee from you. I mean, pray, pray, pray. It's honestly, when that happens, I remember going to prayer. Like I would just, Lord, your word says if I resist the enemy, he'll flee from me. So I'm asking you right now, give me a way out of this mess. And you know something, what I found, and this is, I mean, seriously, it sounds silly, but in all honesty, if you bring prayer into it, at the time you recognize I am now about to put myself in dangerous territory, God will intervene and he will try to help. And I mean, a very practical bit of advice is if you know you have a weakness, you don't put yourself in danger. You just don't do it. I mean, I remember there was one person in my life in particular who, you know, and my husband had the same effect on me. And so it was just like, even when we were courting and then when we were engaged and we knew we were going to get married. Now by that point I was a lot more mature spiritually, and he was incredibly mature spiritually. So there was be equally yoked. Yeah. You have to date someone who loves the Lord, who has the same faith, because
who's going to fight for that.
It's way easier. Because then if I was weak, he was strong. If he was weak, I was strong. Kind of like Paul and
That's
the
actually
Lord.
a really good point, though, being equally yoked. And that sounds like such a catchphrase because my parents would always say that. And you're like, what?
What?
But having the same values so you can fight for each other is...
Right. Yeah, because if I dated someone before my husband who really respected my Christianity and he thought my celibacy was so beautiful, but if he had a glass of wine because he wasn't a Christian who was surrendered to Christ, it was like, no. No does not mean maybe. I'm not 12. I mean, like, no means no. You know what I mean? And I mean no. But there was this constant negotiation of it. You know what I mean? When you're with someone who doesn't believe the same things, you're in sort of a constant negotiation, a fight. Yeah. Right. And you don't want to do that. You just want to be able to deal with the flesh with someone who's also trying to deal with their flesh. And daily we have to kill the flesh. And that really involves holding on to God's hand, walking in the Spirit, get in the Word, you know, and if you know that you may get weak, don't stay with the guy after dark. Yeah. By the way,
don't watch that movie.
Don't watch that movie. You know, get off the couch, stop cuddling, turn the lights on. You shouldn't be in the room alone with him or her. It's all those practical things,
which are like common sense, but when you're in the moment, it's hard because those hormones are raging and that attraction is like burning. And
yeah, but what's that really linked to?
I don't know.
I think it's linked to being not really being shaky or not really being solid in your foundation. Because at the end of the day, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. And if you stand for like, I am going to really walk this out no matter what, that strength of resolve inside does give you more strength in those moments to go, hey, I love you, but I'm feeling weak today. So if you love me, like, help me be who I want to be.
So be honest.
Oh, you've got to be honest.
Be super honest. Like, I'm so into you right now. Like, let's just stop. Like, we need to, like, not be together right now.
Right. You have to be completely honest with the other person. So, and I think that's actually really cool, like, to be able to be that honest, because you can't get married to someone without total honesty.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the reality is that, you know, there's a whole lot of ugly that a lot of us carry into our marriage. And if you can't talk about those things, it's going to be tough to make a marriage work.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, how about the girls or the guys who abstained and were told sex is bad, and that was why, you know, it was more like the shame and the fear and the ew, like that's bad. And then, so I've heard of men and women getting married, and then once they actually have the ability to have sex, and it's supposed to be beautiful and holy and all this stuff, they can't enjoy it, or they just can't, because there's this roadblock of it's gross, it's bad, because you've been saying it's bad for like 25 years or however many years, and all of a sudden it's totally lost its value as well. On the flip side,
that's because we live in a culture of Christians that don't talk about sex. We've demonized sex, and the reality is that God created sex, and He says He created it for the marriage bed. And so, I mean, hello, read Song of Solomon. Yikes. I mean, it was awkward reading that book many times in my life, because it was like, cool the book down, please. Like, you know, like, whoa. But I mean, sex is supposed to be enjoyable. And when you're married, you get to have all the legal sex you want. So you should be enjoying it. But it's kind of crazy, because I do understand what you're saying, that whole, you know, it's interesting. People who are raised in that way bring the same shame into the sex act that people, I think, who've had sex outside of marriage actually experience.
I totally agree.
Because it's like sex is associated with something that's dirty and bad and ungodly. And that's just, I think, as Christians, we have got to get a healthier dialogue going about sex. This is the most beautiful example of this I can think of, and this is the healthy example. So Christian, my son, his best friend, Jordan, hi Jordan Juneman, who's from Kansas, and Jordan dated his girlfriend Sarah all through college, and they waited to get married. And so this past summer, Christian was best man in their wedding, and so like a week before the wedding, Jordan starts calling me, and he was like, I can't talk to my mom about this or anybody about this, but Mom, do you know what's getting ready to happen? And I was like, Jordan! And it was so funny, and I just started laughing, and I go, you're getting ready to have sex with Sarah! And he was like, yes, it's gonna be so amazing. And it was so beautiful, because here was this healthy, red-blooded, good-looking, 25-year-old guy who had waited 5 years with the girl that he loves, and they were getting ready to get married, and he was allowing himself now the freedom to be excited and to start thinking about it. And she was buying sexy lingerie and getting ready, and it was really cute, because then of course I had to text him, you know, like after the wedding night, how was it? Was it great?
God.
Are you excited? You know, and it was sending me blushy faces, and it was awesome. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
I just love that you would even send him those texts right after. Yes. How was it?
Through the whole honeymoon. Because you know what? Because I was like, this is a healthy mindset toward it. Like, celebrate it. And I wanted to be a part of the village that was celebrating it with them, because they're an awesome role model to all of their friends. And of course it should be wonderful and great, and everyone should be cheering.
Yeah, like, it's a good thing. We shouldn't be like, you know, whispering in the corner or whatever.
Right. Or not talking about it.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like no one's talking about the elephant in the room.
Totally.
It's like, excuse me, they're getting ready to have sex. They've waited 6 years. Hello. We don't want to give them a round of applause. Really?